approach, definitely. A communicative approach, yes, yes.
I guess we're going to see how effective that activities are.
How effective some activities are. Something like that. Well, you know, Eden and I are involved in a lot of interviews. And when we are interviewing new teachers, we ask them like what kind of approach they have. They say communicative approach. And then we say, we look at our books, whatever is published recently, they say it's a communicative approach. Okay? But what actually is happening in the classroom is not always the case. So what I wanted to do today is to revisit with you what was this communicative language teaching once, and then I'm going to show you some scenarios. These scenarios were a little bit adapted, a little bit real life situations, and we are going to analyze this, and we will discuss what parts are communicative, what parts can be improved, what parts are contextualized, what parts are not. Okay? That's basically the aim of my session. First, I have some questions. I will have some questions for us to reflect on your own. First, I'm going to show that. After that, I'm going to go over the principles of communicative language teaching with a handout. Your groups, you will be working on it with your groups. And after that, I'll show you the scenarios. I have 4 scenarios, but maybe we will only do 2 of them or 3 of them. It depends on the time. And then we will have time for questions afterwards, hopefully. So, some questions. Please think about these questions. Does communicative language teaching mean that you only focus on communication? Does a communicative language lesson include any grammar teaching? Can a skills-based lesson, reading, writing lessons, be communicative? If so, how? Just think about it. What does contextualized language teaching mean? What do I mean by saying contextualized? What does coherence in a lesson plan mean? What does a communicative language teaching lesson need to include? Does a communicative language teaching include all skills? How can the communicative value of a lesson increase? Okay, those are our questions. I should shut up. Okay, now I'm going to give you a list. There are 10 principles here. These principles are actually pretty revisited, like 2005. You know, for about 15 years we are in an eclectic approach. For that reason, communicative language teaching supporters or advocates revisited it. And they created some sort of like a revised version like that. Now I'm going to give 2 groups, and I would like you, there are half sentences, I would like you to match the halves with complete the missing parts of the sentences. 3 of them are already down for you.
Yeah, second language learning is facilitated when learners are engaged in B, interaction and meaningful communication.
Right, interaction and meaningful communication.
Collaboration and sharing.
Engaged in collaboration and sharing. Perhaps. That's not the answer for that one. Okay, principle 2. Any volunteers? Principle 2. Principle 2 is now then, would you read it for us?
Effective classroom learning tasks and exercises provide opportunities for students to negotiate meaning, expand their language resources, notice how language is used, and take part in meaningful intrapersonal exchange.
Thank you very much. Did everybody get that right? Did you get that right?
Yes, we got
So what?
this one.
Ahmed?
3A. Sorry.
Never mind. Principle 2. Did you get principle 2 right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, principle 3. Any volunteers? E. Okay, without volunteers. Alright. Mission, can you read it for us?
Meaningful communication results from the students processing content that is relevant, purposeful, interesting, and engaging.
Thank you, that's correct. And what about 4?
A.
Do what? A.
Oh, D. What is A?
You say D?
D.
A. What is it? Well, A is correct. Will you read it, please?
Communication is a holistic process that often calls upon the use of several linguistics or modalities.
Right. So we cannot only look at it from one perspective. It's an integrated thing. Language is not just one-sided, one-dimensional. What about principle 5? Any ideas? G. Yes, G. Now GK. So can you read it for us?
Language learning is facilitated both by activities that involve inductive and or discovery learning of underlying rules of language use and organization, as well as by those involving language analysis and reflection.
Thank you so much. So, we will look at the summary in a minute, so I'm not going to go through 6, 7, and 8. What about 9? C. 9 is C, and 10, D. D as in D. So, now, I sort of like summarized these for you. I want to go through them with you, and I would like to hear your, if you have any comments, I'd like to hear your comments. So, if you think about there are these 10 principles, because I would like you to remember these, because I would like you to look at the sample scenarios with this in mind. Okay, that's why I wanted to give some time on it. The first thing is meaningful communication and interaction. What do I mean meaningful? What's meaningful?
Real.
Pardon? Real life or real life luck. It's not always possible to create real life in the classroom. And there is a reason for the person to engage in this sort of an interaction. Negotiation of meaning. So if we give the meaning to the students, it is less likely for them to retrieve it when they need it. So if they discover it themselves, if they figure it out themselves, we rely on their brain. Okay, they can figure a few things themselves. It's difficult as a teacher to do that sometimes because we like to teach, we like to give. However, they can manage to do some of the tasks themselves. And negotiation, giving options, letting them discover relevant, purposeful, interesting, and engaging content, obviously. Inductive and discovery learning, again, rules and time for reflection on language analysis. So they look at it, they try to understand it, they figure where is what, why is there ing maybe over there, where is this have. Integration of skills, like we said, language is not only one-sided, it has other skills to be integrated. Language learning is a gradual process. This is very, very important. It goes slowly, so we cannot expect them to produce before we even give or enough practice, right? So we have to give them slowly and gradual stages. Of course, our ultimate aim is accuracy. Even though there is communicative approach, communication is the ultimate key. Yes, it is important, but of course, we would like to reach accuracy as well. We cannot ignore it completely. But in the process, mistakes are normal, part of it. It shows that they are trying. Language learners have different ways of learning, so variety in class. Awareness of language learning and communication strategies. Opportunities for students to use and practice the language. And finally, promotion of collaboration and sharing. Now, are you ready for some scenarios? Okay. Okay, the first scenario, the teacher wants to teach the models for speculations. Predictions, speculations. Which chapter is that? Touchstone 3. Touchstone 3. Maybe 11 or something, right? 11. So, he or she shows some pictures from the course book and asks some concept questions, okay? Saying like, is the couple happy? They have a young baby in the picture. How old is the baby? Students guess 1 year old, 1.5 year old. Teacher is concept checking. Can the baby be 5 years old? And elicits no. Teacher does this with 2 other unrelated pictures. Say one of them is about a mechanic, another one is about a doctor. Okay, 2 different pictures, but concept checks each time. Teacher writes on the board how the predictions are made, considering whether it's the strongest or weakest. Strongest or weakest. For example, a baby cannot be 5 years old, so it is strongest. Okay? These types of activities she does it on the board. Then, teacher asks students to get into groups of 3 and look at a picture, reflect on the board, and ask to write similar predictions. They are puzzled and blocked. Teacher goes and tries to help them understand the task and correct the mistakes. And finally, teacher asks students to listen to the course book CD for the language input. He or she gives them the text script worksheet where the grammar points were erased and students were asked to fill in the blanks. Okay, my questions for you in your groups. What is good about this lesson? Or what is wrong with this lesson? And is that a contextual lesson? Does the group work require communication or collaboration? Is this a coherent lesson? Okay? You have 5 minutes in your groups to discuss this, please.
A comedian student won't say, oh, she might. No. okay, it's pretty clear what the situation is.
Any other good things about this lesson?
It's quite guided.
Guided.
You could maybe have some less guided stuff, but at this point, that's a good thing.
Alright, let's now think about, of course, this is a kind of created lesson for us to criticize. So let's think about the criticism now. And in terms of these questions, contextualization, communicative approach, coherent lesson, etc., all that, considering this, what can you tell me? Yes, please.
Teaching, this is yes, no. Maybe a bit more than that, because the teacher's doing all the work. You know.
And why are we suddenly looking at these pictures? Your students, okay, I'm coming into the classroom. Hello kids, today we are going to look at the pictures. Look at this picture. Is this baby 1.5 years old, or can he be 5 years old? Why are we doing that suddenly? There's no sort of like, maybe she did that as a homework, but still that homework is not like a real normal homework. Always let's like keep in mind, why should the students need to know this? What else? More important. I mean, this is not a very, very important. There's a very, very important problem here. Yes?
There's not much communication produced by the students.
Yeah, considering that her aim was to teach models first time, maybe it was not so possible for them to create it, but she wanted them to produce sentences without actually giving them any sort of practice, any sort of proper input, right? That's the most important problem. And why is this here?
They should change places.
Yes, especially for touchstone, I mean, it gives students the context, a real lifelike context, where this language point is introduced in sort of context, so that students kind of understand why these people are using this language, a type of language, in context. That's why, unfortunately, this lesson is not contextual, and this lesson is not coherent for that reason. And let's think about the communication and collaboration. What about the group work? The group work. Even if the group work, let's say, is at the right time, at the right place.
It's meaningless.
It's meaningless because
There's no need to communicate that they can do it themselves.
exactly, they can do it on their own. We can say that it's a collaborative work. Okay, they can do it together. Instead of one person, 2 or 3 people can help each other. We can call it collaboration, but never communication. Just because they are like maybe talking, if you think this doesn't make it a communicative lesson. Communicative lesson has to have a communicative value. Okay, let's imagine that we are going to give tips to this teacher. What are we going to tell her? Improvements. For improvements, what would you say? Slow down. Don't expect too much without giving much. Yes?
Before they go into producing it, the teacher should allow the students to become more familiar with the target structure and ask the students to point out what target structure is used when.
And then, what kind of situations you use it. Otherwise, our students are excellent grammar learners. They know how to make can't be, must be, should be, but not necessarily they cannot produce them, unfortunately. So our job is to give them in context, so they understand what kind of context is necessary. At least, maybe they're not going to be perfect immediately, of course, but they are at least going to have a little bit more chance than this style. Let me show you. This teacher has to think about the learning process. It's a gradual process. Communicative group work requires genuine interaction. Members need to learn something that they would not be able to do otherwise. That's what we call communicative group work. For example, information gap activities. For example, example, quizzes, for example, interviews, then it becomes communicative. And the principles that we studied a few minutes ago, the 5th principle and 9th principle, I thought would be the best. I don't know, maybe you will think other ones as well. I thought those were the most important. Language learning is facilitated both by activities that involve inductive discovery learning, underlying rules of language, organization, as well as language analysis, reflection, and then production. And the teacher is a facilitator. Conducive to language learning and provides opportunities for students to use and practice the language and reflect on how the language is used. Okay, one more scenario. Maybe a skills-based lesson as well. I'll pass that. Okay. Extreme sports. Have you ever taught extreme sports? As a reading lesson? Okay, this one is a reading lesson, and the teacher's aim is to give students more practice on improving skimming, okay, skimming skills in a text on extreme sports. Then, the teacher shows pictures of extreme sports, and then only the title of the text to the students, and make predictions, get them predict, elicit answers, praise them. Okay, you did very well, that's very good. And then teacher pre-teaches 5 important words that students wouldn't be able to guess from context. Then, teacher makes sure that he or she introduces them in the context of the theme of the text. Okay, so everything goes quite nice. And on OHT, teacher shows students the first and last sentences of the first 3 paragraphs of the text and asks students to figure out the main idea. So her aim is skimming. Students make good guesses. Teacher asks how they found the answers. They negotiate and teacher praises them. Any problems? Then teacher gets students to look at the whole text and asks 5 comprehension questions. Teacher models the first question by teaching them how to find the answers in the text, checks if they have understood the questions, and asks groups to work on the rest while she's monitoring. Teacher assigns the question to each group for them to write the answer on the board. And finally, teacher asks groups to read the answers without giving the correct answers until the very end. And students, he or she makes sure how the answers have been found. Okay? Now, my questions. Is the lesson contextualized? Does this lesson have communicative value? How can this lesson be improved? I mean, it looks like a really good lesson, actually. Stages are pretty good. I give you again 4 or 5 minutes. Very conscientious, teaches step by step,
modeling.
Yes, she does modeling. Vocabulary, for example, not too many, just enough number, and all about the context, contextual. Yes?
Asking students how they found the answers is a good way.
Yes, yes, very important. How they found the answers, rather than just giving the answers. Okay, these are very good. Okay, how about why should the students read this? Communicative value.
Well, there's no real communicating that actually, like, where they have to get information and then
Exactly. It's a little bit dry reading lesson. Okay, today we are studying spelling. Here are the questions. Very nice, but it needs some flavor. First of all, students, why should they read it? Why should they read it? We should like create them. A kind of like reason to read. How can we do that? Any ideas?
Like Nesrin's idea was just discuss a bit more in the beginning about extreme sports, what the students' experiences might be, specifically value.
We can do that orally if we don't have time, or if we can perhaps prepare kind of, I don't know, four questions, maybe questionnaire. How many people have, to understand how many people have done bungee jumping, for example. What else? What else?
It's still the same thing, because it's a lesson you have to do it. Even if you ask those questions, how many people are involved in extreme sports? Why should they answer that question? So if you trace it back, you don't always ask the why. Because they're in the classroom and they have to do it. At some stage we have to say that. Otherwise it's all we're trying hard to create real life situations. And at the end of the day, why are they sitting here? I mean, we should give them an
Like the big bang, why did we come to this world anyway? Our special point here is making a lesson communicative. That's why
I can see that. I know that, but we shouldn't push it too hard.
of course, I mean, asking 4 questions right before the class is embarrassing. Arranging 5 minutes for a pre-teaching activity will make them a little bit more alive, maybe in class.
Sure.
Or maybe like,
Not that I disagree with that. I do the same thing, but
yeah,
why should they? They should, because we're trying to teach them.
of course. My message is, sometimes I have to say that we need to improve communicative value of this lesson, and I want to be understood clearly. What do I mean by that? That's very
That's one more thing.
Sure.
We're just going to class, say, okay, we need to read about these things, but why would I be reading it yet? There's no purpose in that. So I think what we're really trying to say is like, you know, if you set a purpose, you can start with any kind of activity. It could be a video, and then as a follow-up, you can ask, okay, why do you think people do these sports? I think there are some reasons in the text as well.
Right, yes, it's about text, of course. You have to have a leading
See what the
questions.
reading text says about it and see kind of set expectations and change their expectations. But
Sure, just showing them the title and asking them to make predictions. What's the text about? Even that gives, and the teacher does that. The teacher gives the title and asks students.
Yes, a little bit
There's
more.
everything.
What I'm saying is that the curiosity factor can be increased a little bit more by perhaps personalization factors, like asking for personalized quizzes, or maybe like, what do you expect in this text? Okay, today we are going to read a text. Yes, it's lesson, but let's think about it. What are we going to read? Maybe while they are reading, they are going to be a little bit more interested. And check whether, of course, we all are doing this, and I'm just reminding. And how about other skills? Basically, this is basically a reading lesson. Students are reading, and maximum they speak while giving the answers. Not even, that is not even speaking. But how can perhaps some Yes, a questionnaire, for example, at the beginning, so that they ask each other, a kind of like interview with each other, so speaking can be added that way, or speaking listening, or a video can be added. There's an activity.
Writing could be done as well, depending on the topic. They could write something or create a poster.
At the end, perhaps.
But it's always an additional activity, isn't it? It's not a reading class anymore. It's just a post activity that you make the students listen or write as a homework. Maybe they can study the new learned vocabulary or collocations or sentence structures. But it's out of the reading class. It's out of it. It's additional.
Well, if you do the pre-reading activities like we discussed, it can be combined.
Yeah, it can be combined, but it doesn't help to the reading skills that we are trying to teach there.
Yes, because it's a small reading skills, but we are talking about integrated skills. Right? Integrating skills into the reading lesson. Reading skills, that's what I'm trying to say.
In addition to that, you can ask your students to find a parallel text of the text that you have taught in class and find the similarities and differences, or a text which talks about the opposite side of the idea, main idea given in the original text. Then you can integrate extensive reading.
Activity is always very fruitful, at the end of the text. They can discuss. I mean, they are going to learn, like, for example, in the extreme sports, what's the psychology behind people who engage in these sort of activities, and then they discuss about that. Do you have that? Don't you have that? Anybody in your family has that? Have you detected that sort of psychology, etc.? Okay. Well, we have 10 minutes. I have 2 more, but I'm not going to bore you. But do you have any kind of questions? These are some of the ideas. A questionnaire, IMU activity, a short video clip. I love that IMU activity. You write sentences like, I have never done bungee jumping, whatever. But I answer these questions as you, and you answer the same questions for me as me, and then we communicate at the end. I thought that you have never done bungee jumping. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very communicative. They really need to understand, and it creates curiosity. It is personalized. There is a reason why they should. Yes.
I've heard that. So what did you write down and then swap the table?
As a teacher, you prepare 5, 7, it depends on your time, sentences, and you give that to all the students. You pair them. A's will try to guess the answers for B's. These are going to guess it for A's. So I agree. And then you swap and you think, number 1, you thought that it is, I have never done, well, I've done in fact 3 times or something like that. No? So it is sort of, why did you think like that? Because you look a bit shy, or you look not such a, I don't know, it really creates a lot of discussion. Again, for more purposeful, meaningful, communicative, engaging, relevant lessons. And principle 4, communication is a holistic process that is proposed among the use of several language skills and modalities. Well, I will go to the final notes. Remember the questions I asked at the beginning? Is communicative language, does communicative language teaching mean you should only focus on communication? Definitely no. Of course, in communicative language teaching, there is a certain emphasis on grammar teaching, because in the end, we would like students to have accurate sentences. CLT includes grammar teaching and reinforcement. Skills-based lessons can be communicative by integrating other skills and personalized activities at the beginning and at the end. Contextualized situations, not by isolated sentences. There are so many examples of isolated sentences. Communicative value often increases if the classwork requires real purposes and meaningful interaction. And a coherent message shows the understanding of language learning process, provides enough and relevant practice for us for production. So a learning process from input, practice, little bit less control practice, and then production. My reference is this, and thank you so much for being here. Anything that possible? Of course.